everyone has a story, but it's what you choose to do with that story that's going to define you in your future. Outside looking in, I had a picture perfect life. I went to a good school. I played sports. I had both parents in my house. I grew up in a Christian home, middle class family, have an older brother. And with all that growing up, I just grew up with a lot of anger and bitterness inside. And a lot of it stemmed from something that had happened to me as a little girl. It was a sunny day, riding on my bike like kids play. Nearly twice my age took a liking to my frame, and now we took away pieces of my youthful days and introduced me to a stage I shouldn't know about at that age. I was sexually molested when I was 5 years old by a family member. Unfortunately, it was something that happened to me for many of years until finally I got older and I was able to speak up and tell someone what had been happening to me. It was something that I struggled with going into my adult years. I didn't know how to deal with the anger that and the resentment and the bitterness I had built up. And it wasn't until I finally gave my life to the Lord that the healing process slowly began. And I finally just allowed God to just really be the restorer in my life and the healer in my life. When I finally let go of everything and placed my life in His hands, I started to see, He began to show me bits and pieces of why, I acted, the reason why I would react to certain things a certain way, the reason I would speak to people a certain way, the reason why I would just do certain things, the way my relationship was with my father. At one point, I just got very resentful towards him, and I couldn't understand why. For many years, I just started kind of building up this anger towards him. And then, when I finally gave my life to the Lord, He started showing me, a lot of it just was because I felt like He was supposed to save me from what had happened, or protect me, I should say. And, I had to learn it wasn't my father's fault, what had happened to me as a little girl. He had no knowledge of what was happening. My parents had absolutely no knowledge of what was going on. So it was something that, as I began to get older, I started learning that it was something that was somewhat common in young women's lives. And it began to anger me in a way, because I felt like, how come people don't talk about this? Why is this being hidden? Who do you talk to when this happens? Is the church dealing with this? Your parents, it's hard to speak to your parents about it, because a lot of times, in all honesty, they'll feel like it's somewhat their fault, because they feel like they didn't do a good job protecting you. And it's not their fault. The person's fault is the person that took advantage of a young child and chose to take away their innocence. It wasn't until I began to really understand that concept and know that, I chose to give my life to someone who was choosing to heal me, and He was the creator of my life. And just because someone had taken a piece of me when I was a little girl, it didn't mean that I had to let it define who I was going to be the rest of my life. I can't let this situation break me. I'm just going to allow God to just take what's broken, put those pieces back together, and just give me a platform so I can speak. And it's been a blessing. I've been able to speak to young women all around the country. It's been amazing to see how Rhema Soul has been able to just make such an impact. And it's nothing that we're doing. It's nothing that we're saying. It's really just favor that God has given us. And my story has been able to help bring healing to others. And it came at a scary time, because I didn't speak about it often until we did the song Fly Away. And I felt like it was time for me to really speak about it. And I remember working on the song and recording it. It was something that was just so personal to me, because I felt like, man, I'm finally going to release this. I'm finally going to put it out there. And at the same time, it was something that it was going to be something I was going to deal with. I had no choice to deal with it once it was out there. And then when we began recording the music video for it, I felt like, man, it's really going to be out there visually. Now we're putting a visual to this audio portion of what has happened to me. Am I going to have to relive this pain? Am I going to have to relive this hurt? And I remember one day praying, and I said, God, if I have to reopen this wound in order for another young woman or even a young man to receive healing from it, then I'm willing to do it, just as long as you give me the strength to do it, because on my own strength I can't. And I remember at that time I still felt like anger about what had happened, and I realized I still hadn't totally forgiven. And so through that whole process of working on that album, I remember just kind of keeping that in my forefront and saying, God, I want to forgive before I'm able to speak about this situation. And finally, I got to a place where I was really able to say, I forgive him. It's been amazing, man. We've been able to speak to young women, and I just want to encourage you and say that, these things in life sometimes are going to happen. It's life. No one has a perfect life. You may come from a situation just like mine. You may have been sexually molested. You may have been raped. You may come from a home where there was nothing but physical abuse occurring. You may have come from a household with, drug addictions. Everyone has a story, but it's what you choose to do with that story that's going to define you in your future. And I believe that wholeheartedly. We serve a God who made us. This God that we serve made us, and we say this all the time, but He is the creator of our being. So who else would you go to find the answers than the Creator? And who's going to fix you when you're broken? And that's who made you, and that's God. As years have gone by and we've been able to speak to young people, it's been amazing to just know that my story, even if it changes one life, it's been worth it. So I just encourage you, man, just love God, allow Him to love you, love yourself. These things will happen, and you can either sit and dwell on it, or you can pick yourself up and say, all right, I'm willing to fight through it and allow God to be my healer. And I did an interview the other day, which I thought was interesting. This guy said that when you go through the situations in life, you have to speak from a moment of victory, not from a point of pain. And I thought that was so powerful when he said it, because a lot of times I think as artists, we like to speak from a moment of pain. We like when we write in our artistic craft, you usually write where you're at in life. And when I wrote that song, it was still a moment that was still causing me pain. But when I speak on a platform now, I speak from a moment of victory because I've overcome that. I didn't allow that to break me. I didn't allow that to take away this calling, this moment in time, if I can't, say anything better. But, I feel like I've gotten to a great place in my life where God has really, just taught me who I am, and I'm truly finding my identity in who He is. And, I never want to feel like I finally have found myself, because I think when you get to that point, you start to feel like you have finally arrived, and I don't feel like that. But I do feel like God has me in a great moment to just really start learning who I am in Him, and to know that I'm able to make a change. And if it's just solely just screaming from the stage just that Jesus loves you, that's all that matters to me. Jesus loves you. He's your healer, and he wants you to know that He loves you. So fall in love with yourself and fall in love with God, and your life will just be amazing. That's as good as it's gonna get, ladies and gentlemen. 87 takes, but it's all good.
He said before we were born, He knew our purpose. We were made in His image, so you are perfect. None could take your place, cause you deserve it. The apple of His eye, His prize, He said you're worth it. Yeah, and don't forget it, girl. When the whispers start to come, the promises of the world.